And it's December. We're doing Fix the Mix Challenge for December. If you don't know, we do these about once a month. We're excited to have so many of you come back. Some of you have been with us 2, 3, 4. Some of you have been doing this with us for a year now. We do them every month. And for those of you who are new, huge welcome. We're just excited to have you here. And we'll tell you a little bit more about what we're doing here as we kind of move forward with this. Really quick first, though, introductions. My name's Caleb Lovelace. I'm part owner and director of education for mastering.com. I've been in the industry for 25 years, and I've worn a lot of different hats, but I've also had a chance to be teaching and working and training other engineers, and worked with thousands of engineers over the years, and it's just a huge joy in my life. So I'm very excited to continue that today, work with a lot of you, and that's me. We also have Mr. Warren Hewitt here with us. Needs no introduction, multi-platinum. The list could go on and on and on, but he's also one of the mentors in our school program for engineers and producers. And we're excited to have him as part of our program here. And thanks for jumping on today.
Yeah, that's fun. I want to speak to that for just 1 minute so people know exactly what it is, because I see there's a lot of Academy members here. So it's fun. It's like we do one-on-one basically, because 10 or 20 people, 30, 40 people will jump on, and I do it once every 2 weeks, and we come on and they load in songs and we listen to songs, and they actually come up on screen, and we talk about the songs, we talk about the production, recording, mixing, mastering, everything. But we end up doing a lot of songwriting and production talk, which I think not only is that I feel like my forte, I actually think that's the most important thing. As much as we talk about, mixing it and mastering it, you really want to have a great song to actually record in the first place. And then you want to, of course, produce it and arrange it really well. So that's a lot of fun. So if you're not already in, I'm sure many of you are already, but those of you that aren't in, that is a big deal for me. And last week in particular, I don't know if you guys got to see it last week, but there were some incredible tracks in there. Like really great thing.
Yeah.
And that's lovely to see because, there you go. Nick says Warren's coaching sessions are worth the money. Thank you very much, Nick.
Yeah, those students are really coming up with some amazing.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So impressive.
Yeah, and I love that because that, creativity breeds creativity.
Yep. We're thankful to have him and all the wonderful counsel he gives to our students. So this is obviously a free event, so welcome everyone here. We're hanging out today, and we're going to have a great week working with everyone and offering something free for all of you to come and help your mixes be better, help fix the mix. We also have Mr. Jake Codeweiss here. He's another one of the mentors in the program. He signed his first record deal right out of high school. He's been doing this almost as long as I have and just absolutely crushing it. He's worked with tons of top-tier artists, and he also is huge in the sync world. He has over 1,500 placements to his name over the years, so he's a mix and mastering guru, a production guru, and also knows a lot about sync. And we also have Mr. Michael Gilbride, our general manager at mastering.com. He's the reason you're all here. He's been harassing you with the emails and text messages. So if you hated those, it's his fault. And if you loved the reminder, that's also his fault.
And if you hated it, don't tell me. Because it's free. It's free. So, hey.
We're really thankful for him. He puts a lot of work in behind the scenes to work with sponsors for these so that they can be free for everybody. And we couldn't do this without Michael. So that's us. We're hanging out. This is mastering.com. Let's dive in a little bit. A couple housekeeping items really quick. Just make sure your chat settings are set to everyone instead of hosts and panelists. That way you can interact in the chat. We don't turn that off. We want you to interact with each other. And also make sure we gave you a link to join this free school group. If you don't know what that is, it's not a gimmick. There's nothing we get out of this. It's just a place we host kind of a bulletin board type arrangement for anyone that comes to these so that you can communicate with each other. It's also the place we put replays, so you'll be able to go there and get replays for these sessions if you miss stuff. So you might want to make sure you sign up for that group, get in there, start interacting with each other, and there's no catch. It doesn't cost anything. It's all free to you. It's just...
Yeah, I'll post the... I'm going to keep posting the link. So you'll see SKOOL, join that school community. If you want replays for this event over the 3 days, let's say you can't make a session, they're going to be posted in school. We do all of our reminders in there. We do all of our schedules. We do some cool contests and stuff. Sometimes we take students track and we use them on Fix a Mix and stuff like that. So it's completely free. If you aren't in that school community, Link is in the chat right there. Go ahead, click it. It's completely free. And again, that's where you'll be able to access the replays and recordings. So if anybody asks, send them to school.
I also mentioned that mostly because in about 5 minutes from now, someone in chat is going to go, are there replays for this? Yes,
Yeah,
there's
where can I watch
replays.
this?
They're in school. You can let them know. We want to make sure you get as much information as you can. So here's the overview for the next 3 days. This is a 3-day event. We're going to do 2 to 3 hours per day. We're diving into mixing philosophy. And then we're going to do a lot of demonstrations as well. So we're going to tell you things to focus on. We're going to talk about some big picture philosophy. And then Jake is actually going to take you in. We have a track here to work on. We're going to complete the track in the next 3 days. We're going to take you through the entire process and then give you an opportunity with some action items to go and do this yourself as well. So you can, for all of you kinesthetic learners, you can go and put it to practice and get that experience. So it should be a lot of fun. We love doing these. It's a ton of good information, and we also just have a lot of fun together.
Yep.
So,
And Jake, you're going to be posting the multi-tracks for this to play along in the school group, right?
Is that?
I don't know if we have multi-track access to this one. I'll have to ask the band, but if not, we could post something else.
Cool. Yeah. So if you are looking for them, we'll keep you posted in the school group. Again, I'll keep posting that in the chat here. Make sure you join that. And if we can get permission from the band, we will post those multi-tracks in there as well.
What's fun about this challenge and maybe unique, we like to do things really transparently and really straightforward. This isn't a gimmick. We're not going to hold back stuff. We're just going to give you as much information as we can over the next 3 days. You can ask any questions in the chat. We'll answer as many as we can. There's nothing hidden here. We want to help. We want people to come to this and have a great experience, have a good time. That's why a lot of people have been coming back for over a year now since we started doing these. So we aren't going to hold back. Please ask your questions. We'll try to get to as many as we can. We do miss some, so be patient with us, but we'll do our very best. We're going to watch a lot of valuable demonstrations from Jake, so we're not just going to talk at you. We're going to show you, and that's always great. And we want you to engage and ask questions, both here and also in the school group, right? You're a part of a like-minded community here. Join the school group.
You don't know how to make chords. This is
Join the school group so that you can get in there and network with people and ask questions and post your stuff. That's what it's all about. Community is very, very important to us. It's so easy for us all in our little rooms and basements and bedrooms and little studios to feel disconnected from the engineer community, and we want to change that. We want people to come together and support each other as things get more fragmented like that. So be sure to be a part of all of this that we're doing. What's tricky about this challenge? Well, it's only 3 days, so can we teach you everything that there is to teach you about mixing in 3 days? Of course not. We're going to focus on some very big picture stuff. That's what it's all about. Let's try to make improvements over the next 3 days, not perfection. It's about getting better, and that's what that's what we're going for here. So in the next 3 days, we're going to do that. We also recognize that everyone's at a different level. So we have beginners that are here with us today, intermediates, and people who are more advanced. And we want to offer something for all of you, but we also want to make it a safe place for all of you. So for those of you who are more advanced, you have an opportunity to help some of the people who are a little less experienced with all of this. And I hope that you take a chance to do that both in the chat here today and also in school. So we recognize that, and I think I want to speak directly to some of the beginners for just a second. There may be things as we go through the next 3 days that is like totally over your head, and that's okay. Don't get frustrated by that. You're still welcome here, and we'll answer as many questions as you have. There's also some stuff that what's probably best to do is just grab a notepad of paper, and if you have a question that's more simple, something that's Googleable, something that's YouTubeable, like about how a knob on a plugin works, we may not have time to necessarily dive into every feature of every plugin or every feature of every DAW or whatever. It might be something you need to Google. So write those questions down, and then afterwards, go and Google this stuff that you need to for the more particular questions, but try to focus on the big picture concepts that we're focusing here, because that's going to get your mindset right, which is really, really important. That other stuff you can figure out. There's always YouTube and Google stuff for that, but the mindset is the really important thing. And then we also know that everyone is listening in different environments. And so some people are in rooms that are accurate. Some people are in rooms that are inaccurate. Some people don't have the best speakers. We recognize that not all of it's going to translate perfectly. We're actually going to give you some things to work around that so that we can be as on the same page as possible. But we are aware that that will play a part in this. So we'll have to take that into account and discuss that as we move forward and just do the best we can.
Can I interrupt you?
Yep.
So there's a question here. It says, why is mastering seen as a different phase of producing? Why can't we achieve that right by mixing? You can. I have done many, it's a great question. I really want to jump on it. I've done so many albums where the mastering engineer has done either next to nothing or nothing on the majority of the tracks. So sometimes, like any part of the job, it's the same as being the engineer. The engineer sometimes can throw up 2 microphones and there's something magical about the performance it's captured, and that is it. That's the end of the process. There's been so many stories of things like that. When you think of Kind of Blue, you know, the greatest jazz album of all time, I suppose inarguably, quite frankly, easily the biggest selling jazz album of all time. I heard it was, you know, basically, you know, accent miking, and the mix was printed to 2 tracks, so that was it. And I know when Al Schmidt came to mix it in Atmos, they found there was nothing to mix. It was just a stereo track. So they ended up putting a pair of speakers in Capitol Studio A and then miking the room in multiple positions and then mirroring that into Atmos. And that was how they did it. They just reproduced a band in a room. So yes, the answer is mastering isn't a different phase. Doesn't have to actually save anything. Sometimes it does nothing, and sometimes it does a ton, and most of the time it's somewhere in between. So
yeah,
I saw that question and I didn't want it to disappear.
Ideally, a great mix wouldn't need much on the master, and that's something we'll get into. In fact, that's a great segue into this next slide, because in addition to teaching you how to mix, we are mastering.com. We have a revolutionary curriculum and school program based around what mastering engineers understand about the world and about mixing and about production. There's something very unique that I'll tell you about as we kind of go over the next 3 days. But over the next 3 days, in addition to mixing, we're also going to teach you how to think more like a mastering engineer. So when Jake gets done with the portion of the song that we're going to do today, we're going to hop back to some slides, and I'm going to talk to you about how we can start using some mastering tools and some mastering mindsets to understand our mixes better. It's very enlightening, so you won't want to miss that part. And again, I'll get into that more as we go forward. But yeah, you're also going to get some mastering mindsets, some mastering information over the next 3 days, and that should be really valuable as well. So without further ado, we want to introduce to you the mix we want to fix. This is the song we're going to be working on for the next 3 days. This is from a band called Local Kin. And really cool. We haven't done this style, I don't think, on any of these yet. We try to do a bunch of different styles. And so I'll hand this over to Jake really quick. He can actually play the song. And this is how we received the stems from the band. And so what I want all of you to do is to listen to how it is right now. And I want you to be thinking, what should we focus on to improve on this song over the next 3 days as we go forward? Let me hand it over to you, Jake.
Thank you, Caleb.
You're welcome.
You guys all see the DAW? Give me a 1 in the chat if you can see the DAW. Yep, cool. Sweet. These are the tracks. This is how we got it. I did a little cleanup. I'm going to walk you through all that later. For now, I'm just going to play what we have. These are all faders at Unity. I'm turning down the stereo out a little bit just so I don't blast your ears. Let me know you can hear this okay. Give me a 3 in the chat if you can hear this okay. Yeah? All right.
I know it all too well. My body's under your spell, and I know, given the time, I'd follow, and I don't mind. My
Good enough?
What are you guys hearing?
Jake, what are we hearing? I don't mean like the artist or whatever. Is that a rough? Is that just the tracks faded
all
up?
the tracks. This is all tracks in from the producer at Unity. No volume balance, no nothing. Just how we got all the tracks.
Okay, so obviously printed with a ton of compression and EQ already.
Oh yeah, we have some effects that have definitely been baked in during the production process for sure.
Right. Yeah, I wasn't sure what you were hearing. I mean, because it sounded like a rough mix plus one. Definitely not a rough mix, but maybe not a mix, but definitely more than a rough mix. Well, that's good. I mean, it's good to see people committing.
I love that.
I'm so used to just getting stuff that, it's just like I have no idea what people want because there's no committing to any sound. So you're like, well, what do you want to feature here? And then the rough is even crazier.
Yeah.
I think my only thing is like there's times when I wish there wasn't compression on the vocal. There's a couple of times early on where he went like this and it just it choked. You could tell the compression wasn't set properly or whatever. But yeah, that might be some fun things to talk about to try and breathe some life back into things, you know.
See it right there.
Yeah, exactly.
Chunky.
Yeah.
We can work on that though. What else are y'all hearing? I've seen a lot of people talking about the mid-range mud and lack of low-end definition. So it's a little boomy, a little muddy. The kick isn't really punching through like we'd want it to.
Yeah, it's pretty typical, isn't it? You're expecting a lot of masking in the low mids, a ton of that, and a unique clarity in the low end as well.
Yeah, that never happens, right?
Yes.
Every song I've ever mixed.
Yeah. I can go on one of my tirades now. Remember that whole thing?
Yeah.
Sure you guys will remember about 6 years ago, all the YouTubers saying don't high pass. Remember that? That was everybody made a video about not high passing.
About not high passing?
Yeah, not high passing. Uh-oh. Yeah, I think about pretty much. I saw Graham made one, David Nozzi made one. I think David Nozzi started it. Then Michael in the Mix made one, and they all just kind of like. And I was doing videos, high pass for goodness sake, high pass, and because those videos were getting high views, everybody else would make another video. Oh wow, I can get 1 million views if I say don't high pass.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then every mastering engineer, so we can bring Caleb into this, I would go over to the mastering engineers and they'd be going, oh my God, we're getting all these independent records and you can't find the kick drum, you can't dig out the bass, you don't know what's going on. I was like, I'll tell you what's going on. Every other YouTuber on the internet is saying not to high pass.
Right on.
Yeah.
Well, this will be a fun one. It's going to be a fun 3 days. Lots of cool stuff to work on in this, making it sound really polished and wonderful by the end of the next 3 days. I think this will be great, though. So a nice, different thing from what we've done. So, all right, let's dive into this. Let's switch gears to talking about mixing. I'm going to give you some high-level stuff to focus on today. We have a process that we're going to take you through for the next 3 days. It's not just a process for the webinar, but it's a process we find really works and gives you correct mindsets as you approach mixing. So let's talk about what that means. And let me give you an overview of the next 3 days. Today we're going to talk about session prep, editing, and initial volume balance. Tomorrow we're going to talk about frequencies, dynamics, and space for the instrumentals. And then day 3 is going to be all about vocals, a whole day just on the vocals, making those sound fantastic, frequencies, dynamics, and space. When it comes to vocals, there's a lot to dig into. I want to ask a question, though. Which day do you think's most important to get right? What do you think, Warren? And if you're wrong, if you're wrong, you know, then I get to tell Warren he's wrong.
No, it's just everything building blocks, isn't it? It's like if you don't have a great song, then you know it's one of those things that when you do a video talking, I do a video talking about one specific part of the process. Maybe it's a mixing thing. Maybe it's talking about low end, whatever. Somebody will always go, well, if you haven't got a good song, it doesn't mean anything. And it's true, but it's like we're just trying to highlight one thing. But yeah, great song with an amazing arrangement, great production, captured really well. And then, of course, when it comes to mixing, it's the first thing is if you can prep it and edit it. I think we talked about this on the last time we did one of these. I do private training at my studio, and in Laurel Canyon, we would bring just 4 people in for 3 days, and for 4 people would sit and they'd all bring in something to mix. And every single one of them, I spent, of the 3 or 4 hours I spent on their track, probably half the time was editing it, muting stuff, moving things around. Like, things were sometimes so sloppy that they just thought there was something wrong with the mix. It was just like, it's just not slamming. It's not tight.
That's right.
And I don't mean like gridded. I just mean like, why is the bass, a nanosecond in front of the kick? It needs to sit with it or behind it, never in front. And just silly things like that. So, session prep means that you'll be able to do everything that comes in on day 2 and day 3. Editing means that you might find the things that you think are a problem aren't actually a problem. It's a bleeding mess, and you didn't realize until you cleaned it up. And then, of course, the initial volume balance will tell you everything that you need to do on day 2 and day 3. So, yeah.
Warren's got it. Warren's got it. Your most powerful tool as mix engineers is actually the work you do up front to get everything prepped properly and volume. We think of EQ and compression as the most powerful tools sometimes in space. It is not. That's the stuff that helps you do fine details. But the biggest thing you'll do to get your mix in the right proper place right off the bat is how well you prep it, how well you edit it, and how well you get that volume balance. And we're going to talk a little bit about volume today because a lot of people skip this and they don't realize the power of volume. And I'm going to convince you that really everything is volume. Almost everything is really volume. In addition to that, we're going to talk about session prep. When I talk about session prep, I like to use cooking analogies. If I'm making a big meal, and if I just start by turning the stove on and start throwing stuff into a pan, but I haven't chopped anything yet, I haven't put it in those cute little bowls yet and have everything ready, what's going to happen is I'm going to burn the meal because I'm going to forget, I needed to chop the onion. I start to chop the onion. Everything's burning in the pan, different things like that. That's not the right way to approach mixing either. We want to have everything laid out and properly named and organized and edited and prepped correctly so that when it comes to mixing, we can enter into the mixing mindset and just mix. That's really powerful. Same thing with editing. Just get all that all done before, so you're not going through in the mixing mindset and later you go, I need to edit these vocals. They're all out of time. Now you're out of the mixing mindset and you're all up into the editing mindset. You've thrown yourself out of that creative, wonderful, beautiful space that is the mixing mindset. And then, of course, we're really going to focus on volume today and the power of volume. So let me talk to you a little bit about volume and the power of volume. When I think of mixing, and what I want you all to do when you think of mixing, is think of creating a space for the listener that's a 3-dimensional space. It consists of three lines that create a cube. You have depth. So we know depth is created by volume in particular. Things that are quieter sound farther away. Things that are louder sound closer. That's one dimension of space that we have. We have width. So we have the stereo field to work within. It's not just mono. We have this stereo field to paint side to side. We can make things sound wider. And then we can make things sound taller. How do we make things sound taller or shorter in a mix?
You lay down or stand on a box.
Let's talk about how you create things, how you make things sound tall. Height in a mix is created with frequencies. The listener experiences frequencies in a very visceral human way. We really often experience, for example, low end and bass. Where do we feel that? We feel it in our gut, in our connection to our legs to the floor. We feel it coming up from the earth, right? That's how we experience bass. Where do you experience mids? We often talk about mids as kind of that warm blanket, the heart. We feel it very much in our chest. It's that part of us. It's our core. That's what mids affect. And when we talk about highs, I think we experience those up in our head, above us. We talk about them as air or head voice or different things like that. So you actually
I'm going to interrupt you again. You hate me. Kelly's going to be like, don't bring Warren back ever again. Dave Jordan always used to call it stomach chest. So for him, kick drums was stomach, chest was the snare. So you got like, and because he was a Neve guy, Neve and API guy growing up, and then of course went on to SSLs, it was always 60 hertz in the stomach, 220 on the bottom of the snare. And he said if it was mixed well, you could feel it going, boom, ja, boom, boom, ja.
Yeah.
Boom.
We feel it. We feel it really viscerally. It's a real thing, and highs as well. Too much build up in the highs or too much highs, we start to feel it like in our jaw, like the dentist, or in our our brain.
Man. Feel it like right in the back, way back here in the jaw. Just drilling.
So we really are painting in this dimension of space. We make things taller and shorter, and we do that with frequencies. And normally when we think of frequencies or affecting frequencies in the mix, we think of EQs, right? But frequencies are actually most altered by volume, how you initially set things up. Let's talk about that. Why is that true? Well, every element in the mix has its innate qualities. They may overlap, and they do, but shakers, for example, don't have a lot of bass, or they shouldn't, right? They're up here in the highs, whereas bass is in the lows, and there's all these guitars and synths that are in the middle. And so the most painting we do in terms of that height that we're trying to create is done up front. It's not done with EQ. That should polish things. But we make choices up front with volume as to the overall kind of frequency balance of the entire track. You could turn this on its side if you wanted to and think of it as an EQ. Where we place things with our volume faders then determines so much more than EQ ever will when it comes to these frequencies. Think of it like volume faders like this, turning things up and balancing frequencies. So we're determining the height parameter of our cube with volume. That's important. We're going to do a lot of that today. Width is most altered by volume. There's a reason they put the pan knob on the right above the mixing knob, the mixing fader. Why do they do that? Because it's really just altering volume, but it's altering it side to side. You're taking volume away from one side, adding it to the other. So technically that is volume. That's why it's on the volume fader. It's affecting that, right? We're creating width with volume. This is how we create it. It's all done with panning. And then depth is the easiest to understand. That's certainly most altered by volume. And when I talk about volume, I'm talking about volume and gain, kind of two different parts of loudness. Things that are further away, like I mentioned, are quieter. Things that are louder seem more up front, more in your face. And so we have this whole other depth dimension to paint in. In fact, one of the big mistakes I see a lot of amateur mix engineers make is everything's up front. It's all right here and there's no depth. You want a really flat mix, just push everything up front. They just keep turning those faders up until everything's just kind of blasting. But that's not the way to do it. We want depth. We want some things to be farther away. We want them to be more subtle. We want to hear those on the second and third listen sometimes. And we want other things to be more up front. And we want to tell a story. We tell a story with depth. What do we want the listener's focus to be on? We want that to be more up front or in the right place so we can focus on it. And then maybe that changes and something else happens. There's so much we can do just with volume in painting and depth. And we're painting it again in all of these dimensions with space. First and foremost, by far the most with volume. So volume actually is almost everything. In fact, on day 3, we're going to talk about how dynamics can be most influenced by volume. We're going to actually dive into it, and we're going to use less compressors and clippers and limiters than you think. We're actually going to do so much more with volume automation, and we're going to show you that there's a lot of choices we can make to tell that story that I was just talking about, primarily even with the most important parts of a track, which is often the vocal, and we do that with volume automation, not just compressors. We're going to not take our choices away from us. We're going to be in charge of telling that story. We're going to show you what that means on day 3. So our main goal today, then, is volume-only mixing. We're not going to use any plugins. We're going to see how far, and I love to play this game when I'm mixing with myself. I love to play the game of how professional can I make this sound without ever applying a plugin? How far can I take it by just painting in these 3 dimensions of space? I love that. It's a great way to start, and it's a great way to think about approaching a mix. You're doing the heavy lifting the way you should, and then you can work with more intention in the different parts of the process. Again, we're going to come back a little later. We're going to talk about mastering more, but now's the time we stop listening to me talk. We're going to drop it over to Jake. He's going to start giving us a demonstration about all of this. Buckle up. Let's do it.
What do you think, guys? Want to get started? 12,688 in the chat if you're ready to go. Right. I'm seeing some commas. Cookie for you. There's another one. Cookie for you.
Lots of just ones. They're just bypassing the
Cookie
rule
for you.
altogether.
Yeah, the folks who are done with this gag are just, they just type in number, yada yada yada. Okay, Jake.
No,
okay.
they want to put 5 numbers in. 1, space 2,
Yeah.
8.
You guys are good sports. All right.
Let's do this.
You guys seeing the DAW all right? Seeing this? I'll give you a little bit of a lay of the land first. Here, this is what we're going to do. I'll type it right in this side panel here. 1. Walk through. Just going to walk you through the tracks, show you how this whole thing is kind of set up. Number 2, we're going to do just a quick gain stage move. 3, to get that volume balance. Sound good? Missing anything, Caleb? Warren?
Nope, that's it. That's the goal for today.
Sweet.
Unless there's any editing
Apple.
to do.
Nah,
No editing.
no editing on this one.
But this
So,
is where you
Jake-
do it.
What about with the vocal? What about going in and maybe, or you're going to do that when you do the vocal, gaining up?
We're
Yep.
saving that. We're saving the good stuff for day 3.
Okay.
The vocal, yeah.
just
all-
gonna-
Just because
Day
where
3
you
will be
have,
all
like,
about
you know,
vocal.
It's like, where it's like the transit's gone through and then the compression's like grabbed it and then it's released it.
Mhm.
It's got those little fishtails going on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep, we're gonna do all
We'll
that on
address
day
that
3.
Day 3. Yeah.
Okay.
We used
For
to do
now-
that. We used to do that on day 1 as part of volume because it really is part of the power of volume. But we wanted to give the vocals a whole day for themselves. We didn't want to rush those because a lot of people struggle with them. So we're going to do that all on day 3.
Marvelous.
Yeah. So today, probably what we'll do is just get a static. You know, we're just gonna have to deal with it, kind of like maybe dipping in and out of the mix a little bit, and then we'll handle it on day 3.
That's right.
This is what we got going on, guys. This is the walkthrough. Here we go. We got some drums. All of our drums and percussion sent to a drum bus. All right. We got some sound effects here. We've got this radio tuning sound, and we've got this guitar swell over here, all sent to an effects bus. We've got the jazz bass, and technically it didn't need a bus because there wasn't multiple tracks, but I like to stay organized, and it's just kind of like a mental thing for me. So sent that to a bass bus. We have acoustic guitars. We have a processed acoustic guitar that I've labeled all acoustic, and then we've got a plate. I want to show you what's going on here. So the tracks that you see on the screen right now have been selected. I've hand selected these, kind of like cherry picked these. I'm going to unhide what I've got here. Check this out. So we've got some hidden tracks, acoustic 1, 2, and 3. The acoustic was actually triple mic'd here. It's all the same take, just 3 different mics blended in. Not sure if it's 3 or if it was 1 mic and then they added some processing and just created some layers here or whatever. But they took all of those and basically bounced them down into a single guitar track and then added some processing here, which is some, it's pretty smashed actually, some compression. Let me make sure I don't destroy your ears. Okay. Let's take a listen. You guys hear that? And here are the originals. Check this out. Now we've got some dynamic range happening here with these, right? We got this. A little bit of a brighter one there. And then there's your kind of like, it seems like a, that's the squash, right? That's the squash one. And also added some high end, it sounds like, too, right? So this would primarily be for like pick attack. Right? So the sum of all three of those is this. Right? And I haven't decided yet whether I'm going to go into these and like work with these raw tracks, or if I'm just going to use this. We'll see once we get to the volume balance. For now, I'm going to mute those and I'm going to hide them. Cool. That's that. We got banjo. You know, this is the sum of a few of these tracks here. You know, and that's just a double banjo, swung hard left, hard right. You know, that was bounced down along with some slap delay, right? And this was all done in production. Like, this was just a track. I didn't bake this in or anything like that. This was just another track that was supplied, right? So at that point, I have a decision to make. Do I want to use, do I want independent control over these tracks, or do I want to use more of what the producer had in mind here? I'm going to start on this one. I'm going to start a little bit more on the side of what the producer had in mind. And then if I need additional control, if I need that kind of flexibility, then I'll unmute these and I'll go in on an even deeper level. Right? But for now, this is where I'm going to start. And then we got some banjo plucks down here too. Check this out. All right. Straightforward.
Yeah, they provided both the bounce and the stems. So he's just
Process.
saying, I'm going to start with what the producer intended. If we find problems, then we'll go in and work on the individual tracks.
Exactly.
Someone was saying that...
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Someone was saying your vocal's a lot louder than the track, but maybe that was just because it was just the guitars. Keep us informed if that's the case as we go forward to like the whole song.
Yeah, I can turn up the stereo out if we need to. Turn that up a little bit. You can turn it up a little bit, just a touch. See how that goes. And then that's the what I just explained here about the individual tracks kind of being bounced down, baked in. There's some effects and processing being baked in and things like that, right? That's kind of the case for a lot of this session. We have this happening on violins here. Those are all sent to a violin bus. Keys, same thing here. A lot of these tracks, they included the individual tracks plus the baked in version. So I'm just kind of starting with the baked in. And then they did that for vocals. That's the only one that I did not decide to start with. I need all of that control on a vocal. So I decided to hide that one, mute that one, get the raw tracks. Now, how raw these actually are, if we can just take a look at the waveform and we can see that there's some kind of like processing going on here, right? There's some compression happening here to kind of flatten out the dynamics. And like Warren was mentioning earlier, you can hear some compression artifacts kind of squishing down some of these vocals, right, from time to time. So, we'll work with that on day 3. And that's it. That's the session. That's what we got going on here.
Cool. So
we
we made
hide all of this stuff, right? If you take a look, here's where we started, and here's where we ended up.
Vijay asks a good question. Why wouldn't you tell the band producer to provide unprocessed tracks in the pre? Sometimes you do, and in fact, whenever I bounce tracks out for anybody, I do the wet and the dry. But in this case, we have the wet. If we have to go back and get something dry, we can totally do that. Just like what he's doing with, I'm going to use the stem instead of the individual tracks. I can always go back and work on the track level. I can always go back and get the dry, but we might not need to, right? In this case, if we need to go back and get something, we will, but we'll just start with what the producer had intended.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong. I think producers can bake stuff in that they want. If it's a problem, then it's a problem. If it's not, then it's not. It's part of sound design. So kind of start with that and then work backwards to the more particular, but only if it's a problem. Don't make problems that aren't there.
Yep. Too cool. Awesome possum. So this is where we start. That's the walkthrough. Any questions about that before we move on? Keeping an eye on the chat. You guys with me so far? Yeah, one's in chat. Somebody asked about vocals being in stereo. They were probably just bounced. I mean, they're probably really in mono. They were just bounced out as a stereo track. Like, if we take a look, we'll probably see that both left and right sides are kind of like moving. Channels are moving the same way. All right.
And he sees her weary signs.
Yeah, it's mono. Just a stereo waveform. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's just being represented inside of a stereo container, basically. So that's it. And then I've grouped everything down to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 stems.
Yeah,
Or whatever you want to call them, 8 groups.
You'll see the reasoning behind putting things in buses later. There's method to the madness. It's more than organizationally. That helps. It's nice to organize things. But there's a couple other reasons why we want to use buses.
Sure.
And we'll talk about those as we go forward.
Yeah, we'll run into those. Cool.
It's partially efficiency. It's
How much
partially
conversation should you have with the band or producer before starting to mix?
A lot.
Great question. I love that question. Yes, a lot. Like, I have a ton. I have a pre-production meeting. I require a rough mix from the band to just kind of decipher, maybe what they're hearing. It might not be close to a mix, but it will reveal some things to me about what's important to them, right? So let's say I get a rough mix from a band that's just like all guitars, right? Then I know guitars are important to them. That's how they communicated it to me. It's not the best, result, but that's what I'm taking away from that rough mix, is that they want guitars to be heard. It's an important element to them. So that's number one. Number two is you get references from the band, right? I also like to talk about what their goals are and who their audience is and what other bands they would like to see themselves in a playlist with. What playlist do you want to land in Spotify, or Apple Music or whatever streaming service? How do you want to align yourself in the industry? What's your marketing strategy? All of that kind of stuff. That comes into play for me, and that's a long conversation, pre-production conversation, before we even jump into mix or mastering or production or writing or anything like that. Post-production.
We actually teach our students a lot about this, because it's one thing to be able to mix, but if you want to have a career in this, you have to have great communication skills with clients, and it's your opportunity to set expectations as well. It's how they can communicate with you, you can communicate with them, and the real difference between people who are successful in setting that up, two people who could mix equally as well, it's going to boil down to their communication, their client relationships that they're building with people. And we need more of that. We need more of the human touch as robots start to take over. I don't want to work with robots. I want to work with humans. So we need to bring humanness into all of this process as much as possible.
Yeah, man. And it's fun. I mean, just for me, I like working with people. I like working with humans. I like to hang. I like having a good time. I like tossing jokes around, throwing a few punches every here and there. That's part of it.
Yep.
Making a connection and creating something together that you can be proud of. Right?
Yep.
Anyway.
It's important.
Cool. And being morally flexible. Somebody called me out on my hoodie. I see you, Mashi Joshi. All right, cool. But that's the lay of the land here, guys. Let's do a gain stage, quick. What I'm gonna do here, here, let me back up. This is how we gain. This is how I like to gain stage in the digital world, the digital realm. With my faders sitting at 0, I want that input signal to be somewhere between, like peaking between -20 and -10, right? So average signal level, just kind of like within -20 and -10 decibels, right? So if we take a look at this kick drum, check this out. With the fader at 0, that thing is clipping. It's clipping. Right? That's how it came in. So what we want to do is we want to change the region gain of that so that it's in that sweet spot, -10 to -20. So if I just go over here and pull down the region gain and then play this track again, check this out. Boom, I'm in my window, right? I'm at the top of my window, but I'm in my window, -10 to -20. Done. On to the next one. Where's that one sitting? That one's already in the sweet spot. -10, -20. It's peaking at -14. We're good to go. On to the next, right? So you can do this process manually like this if you want. I like to do it the shortcut way. You guys want to see a shortcut? One's in chat if you want to see the shortcut.
Very clear. This is gain. This is before it hits the fader. This is before it hits all your plugins. That's what gain means. It means before it hits any of your plugins or your master fader.
Yeah. Yeah, this is like region gain, right? This is the signal as it like enters the top of the channel, basically, right? Just kind of flows from top to bottom. This is a signal as it enters the top, right?
Who wants a shortcut for this?
And it's represented here. And the shortcut is called the normalize function, right? We just normalize all the tracks. We can tell all of these tracks to sit within our little sweet spot window, and then we don't have to worry about it. We don't have to do this manually, right? So I'll show you how it's done. In Logic, you might have, if you're not using Logic, you're just gonna have to do some YouTubing, some Googling to figure out how to do it within your DAW.
Most DAWs do it, though.
Most DAWs do it.
I used to do this by hand.
I'm going to hit Command A just to select all the tracks. Right, so now I have all my tracks selected. Whoop. Yeah, this should be... This is not for my hidden tracks. Yeah, somebody mentioned, do you want to normalize your hidden track? We can. I mean, I normally wouldn't really worry about it. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to select them all, though, and I'll just do it to all of them. Normalize region gain. So you do it in Logic, normalize region gain. And we want to affect each individual region. We want it to be peaking. And then you can tell it where you want it to peak. I'm going to say -10. All right, so no higher than -10. And then hit apply. Give it a minute to do its spinny beach ball thing.
By the way, if you want to all feel very loved by Jake right now, Jake literally has COVID. And he's still here with you today. If you hear him sniffling in the background,
That's why.
it's because he literally has COVID. Couldn't miss this though, right, Jake?
Oh, this is my favorite. Aside from the coaching calls, this is like my favorite thing to do.
Your boss must be a real jerk.
Yeah, he's really riding me this week. Boss is really riding me.
What a jerk.
All right.
That's
Well,
all.
that's normalizing.
That's
Did you see
it.
what happened, guys? Did you see what happened? with the normalization, it automatically took all these waveforms and made them about the same thickness, right? Now, what does that mean? That's what it means visually. What does it mean aurally? It means that none of these tracks are peaking any higher than -10, right? The reason why we do this is to save headroom. Make sure no tracks are clipping, just save headroom in the mix. Because all of these tracks, once we start to bring in all the volumes, they all lead to what? This stereo out, right? And if they're all cranked up and they're not sitting in a at the proper input gain, it's just going to jam this up into the red, right? So I found this to just kind of be a sweet spot. Once I start to bring in my volumes of all my tracks, I typically don't have to worry about whether or not I'm clipping the master or there's enough headroom there, right? That's it. That's all we're really doing here. Make sense?
Headroom is a sexy word for engineers, isn't it?
It really is.
I love it.
Headroom, drool emoji.
And what you'll find is if you do this up front, because we all know we're trying to get to that -6 dBFS range kind of on the way out before we send it to master. If you do this, you're pretty much going to end up there or be close to it. So it gets you in the right space mentally.
Somebody asked, is headroom as important with 32 floating bit processing? No, it's not as important, but it's
Still important for the reason I just mentioned.
important. Yeah.
It's not gonna clip, but you know.
Yeah, and it's good practice, you know. Cool. Here we go. What about bringing the volume faders down to 10 decibels? That's technically not the same. Volume is different than gain. Gain happens here at the top, like basically up here at the top of the channel. Like imagine this is our channel, right? Gain is what comes in and kind of goes through our processing, and it only really becomes volume at the bottom of the channel. Once that signal hits this section, like the fader section, now it's volume. Like once it's in pan mode and fader mode, right? So it's not accomplishing the same thing. It's not touching the signal up here. It's just simply turning it down after it's gone through all this processing, right? So fundamental difference there. I only use Pro Tools. Same concept. Doesn't matter.
Yep. Doesn't matter what DAW you use.
Yep. Doesn't matter. Cool.
I don't think there's any real good caveats to not gain staging. I think you should just always do it as a start to the mix.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the one scenario where I wouldn't do it is if like I'm working with a producer or a band that sends me a session that's like in a starting spot. Like they're okay, happy with the mix. I'm not gonna go and blow it up just to add my secret sauce on it, right? I'll use it as a foundational kind of like starting point and then just move some things around from that spot, right? So they send me a Logic session with, you know, maybe some of their plugins on it and like volume levels in a very specific way, right? That's the only scenario that I guess I wouldn't really just blow up the whole volume.
Yeah, trust. Do this with gain. Don't do this with your volume knob. You want to free that up. Trust me. And yes, you will lose the relationship that the original tracks had, that the producer had, but that's fine. We need to reestablish those anyway in a mixing mindset. It doesn't take too long to do that, and it's really, really important because we're thinking about that cube now. We're the artist here, painting in that cube. So we need to start again.
Yeah, that's like a sweet spot for input gain also during recording. That's kind of what I always aim for also. It's like between -10, -20 on average kind of signal bouncing around there. You know? Anyway.
Right. Let's dive in.
Yeah. Let's do it. So what I'm going to do now I can delete this off the list. This feels good. Boom. All right. Just crossing things off the list. Volume balance. I'm going to select all these tracks and just bring them down to -infinity. All right. Then I'm going to start by just bringing some elements in, just one thing at a time. And we'll be on our way.
Where do you start with that?
Typically, I like to start with like a kick drum. However, in this track, the kick doesn't really come in until, a ways through the song. So I'm going to choose, instead of the kick being kind of like my anchor element, I'm going to use the vocals as an anchor element. Probably vocals and what else? What are like the first sounds that we hear? Acoustic. So I'll get like a good acoustic and vocal blend first. And then I'll probably move over to the kick. We'll see. Definitely acoustic and vocals first. But the point here is to like start with an anchor, quote unquote, anchor element that you can just bring up to 0 and then mix everything else around it. Right? For me, that's probably going to be the vocal. And do I start with the chorus? No, actually, I don't. I move chronologically throughout the song. I like to go section by section. Right, so that way it gives me kind of an advantage, because you get to listen to it the way a listener would, right? You get to kind of like pay attention to how the sections transition from like verse to chorus or verse to pre-chorus, and what elements are exiting and entering the arrangement, and it gives you a sense of how to pull them up or down volume-wise as the song progresses, as you kind of make your way through that journey of the song. Right, that's the way I like to do it, anyway.
Yeah, you just got to decide what you want to build your song around.
That's all.
It's
all it is.
You don't need to overthink it either. A lot of times it's the kick. The kick is like a very, kind of centralized point of any song. In this case, since it doesn't have kick till later on, the vocal and the acoustic is a great place to start. You could start with kick here, though, if you really wanted to. It's not that big a deal. You just got to pick something, but try to make it a foundational instrument, something that's kind of integral, not something that's only comes in for 3 seconds in the first verse and 3 seconds in the outro. Right.
Yeah, like I'm not going to use this whistle part as my anchor element, It's like happens there, and there. It's not like this constant like entity that drives the song or anything.
I'm not going to use a pad that's just like droning.
Just an atmosphere, kind of like there to kind of glue things together, and like, you're not going to use that kind of stuff. So rhythms, basically, rhythms and leads. Cool. Start with vocal. I'm just gonna start bringing this stuff in. If you guys are cool, start doing some volume balancing.
Let's do it.
Yeah, give me 203,777 if you're ready to go. Well, someone said no. That's cool though. No judgment.
Seems really simple, this stuff, but I promise you there's a whole bunch of you're setting yourself up for success by following this process, and we'll talk more about that a little bit later.
All right, let's do it.
Well, I know.
So first thing, like this vocal is like really, there's a ton of brightness. There's a ton of high end kind of in this vocal, right?
He'd all do well.
Crispy.
And bleed. I noticed that there's a lot of bleed in these tracks too, right? So monitoring situation wasn't the best.
Sunday or spell. And I know, given the time,
So we're gonna pull that up alongside the acoustic guitar.
I know it all too well. My body's under your spell, and I know, given the time, I follow, and I don't mind.
Cool. Just gonna kind of keep rolling through this. I'm gonna spend a lot of time getting this vocal and acoustic right here.
I know,
There's an acoustic, like, there's a room mic on this too,
I know,
or a reverb.
I know it all too well. My body's under your spell, and I know, given the time,
And then there's some like slap and reverbs and stuff like that for this vocal.
I know it all too well. My body's under your spell, and I know, given the time,
Yeah, this. I think this is probably a little mismanaged. Probably too much dry signal coming in through there, to have this as a standalone effect. So we're gonna have to kind of keep that in our mind. I'm gonna write a note here that the producer, the vision was to have a little bit of slap delay on that.
Yeah, we won't use their slap. We'll slap our own on there later.
Slap our own slap on there. Slap. And I'm just gonna hide that track.
I know it all too well. My body's under your spell.
I'm gonna use our own reverb later too.
I would do the same thing on the acoustic guitar. I don't really like that boomy plate.
Yeah, it gives us
More
a little
control.
bit more flexibility to do some stuff later too.
I know too well.
Like phased, maybe?
It's also, yeah, just really boomy on the sides too. It's really
Kind of like, yeah, it's kind of like something weird going on there. We'll go ahead and hide that.
You just need to remember their intention, and we can recreate that later.
Nope.
I know it all too well. My body's under your spell.
I'm happy with the acoustic vocal balance there. We'll just keep going. Keep bringing some stuff in. Let's get the drums in. That kick. Let's get that kick in there.
I know
Rare.
my mind, it keeps the score. In trouble, it locks the door.
This is why I didn't start with the kick, because if I started that kick at 0, then I would have to crank that vocal up. It would just be too weighty.
Yeah.
It would pull the focus away from the lead vocal.
Yeah.
My mind,
Bit of room on that kick.
my mind,
I actually like that one. I think I'm going to keep that one.
my mind, it keeps the score. In trouble, it locks the door. Leaving out on its own. Line. trouble, he locks the door, leaving out on its own.
Cool.
My mind, it keeps the score. In trouble, he locks the door, leaving out on its own. She speaks a sorry lie, and he sees her weary sighs fall out from what is now an unsure vow. Hold out, just hold out your fires, and hide all, just hide your desires.
Okay, I found a spot that I want to separate. This one right here, this little lead, the bing, bing, bing. There's a little hook in there that I want to have like additional control over.
Right now they're bounced down into that one whirly track. So he's saying, I want more control here. We're going to mute the stem and work on the individual tracks. That's what we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. I think it's this part right here. Right? Ding, 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 ding. That's got to come in. Like, you can hear it, right? Like, it's right in the gaps of the phrases of the vocal.
Hold out, just hold out your fires, and hide all.
Right? Nice little hook in there. So now instead of just relying on this bounced track, listen how low it is in the bounce track, right?
Yeah. Too low.
Let's-
It's a nice little hook.
Yeah, let's bring it into the spotlight a little bit.
And hide all, just hide your desires, and stand your ground, just hold your ground.
I want to get the rest of those vocals in there before we bring in some of the other stuff. So let's.
I've seen a couple comments in chat, people thinking about a boominess of the bass or a something. You might be the people who would reach for an EQ here and not focus on volume, but use your imagination. Try to go as far as you can with volume first. You'll get more informed by the end of this process than if you throw yourself off that mindset and that path by starting to worry about EQ now. Make notes for yourself later of things to fix, but now we're being very intentional with volume, and that's where our mindset is at. And if we take little notes for ourselves, then we can be more intentional tomorrow when we're thinking about EQ and compression and that type of stuff. We want to work with a lot more intention instead of derailing where our mind is at.
Yeah, and if I can think back to like any of the times that I've just gotten lost in a mix, or like my longest mixes ever, it's been because of focus being lost. You know, it's been because I was following, you know, a black hole of like a side road, basically going down a side road.
Getting rabbit hole. Go.
Unintentionally.
Yeah,
You know?
it's easy to start and you think, oh, it's just one little thing, and then an hour later you're still tweaking some sort of EQ on something. It's like you're way off. You've lost the whole flow of this cube you're trying to paint in and this challenge you had for yourself. Trust me, You'll work with much more intention if you focus on this part of the process and then focus on EQ and compression once you have this generally laid out. And then sometimes you just have to use your imagination. Is there some boominess here? Is there some stuff to clean up? Of course there is. But how close can I get it without having to distract myself? Yeah, squirrel. Exactly.
Still working on your snare, bro?
Yeah.
I just finished 5 mixes.
Exactly.
Hold out, just hold out your fires. And hide your desires. Hold out, just hold out your fires. And just hide your desires. But stay.
There it is. See, that hook is very intentional, right? That's that whistle.
And just hide your desires. But stand your ground. Just hold your ground. Hold out, just hold out your fires. And just hide your desires. But stand your ground. Just hold your ground.
This is sounding pretty good so far. So I think the very first sounds that happen in a song tends to be the cue to the listener on how loud to turn their volume knob. I'll say that again. The first sounds of a song cues the listener on how loud to turn their volume knob. All right. So why is this important to understand? It's important to understand this for when the rest of your instrumentation comes into the arrangement, right? So if your listener hears a sound and then sets their listening level, and then the full band comes in, what are you doing to the listener at that listening level? Are you causing them to turn it down? Are you causing them to turn it up? Or is it just right? These are the things that I'm kind of listening for with the intro to this song, right? We got this radio tuning sound effect. Well, what am I inclined to do as soon as that acoustic guitar comes in, right? And then with my volume knob, leave it the same, turn it up, or turn it down, right? If I'm somewhere kind of like within this range of like keeping it at the same spot and not being like put off by the acoustic guitar being too loud, or I'm not having to turn it up in order to hear it, then I know I'm in a good place. So I think I can actually probably turn this radio tuning up a little bit. Let's hear it again.
I know it all too well.
Dude, the harshness of that vocal though just like destroys it all. But I think the volume is good.
Little note, move on. We know it. We know it's there. It's fine.
Body's under your spell, and I know, given the time, I follow, and I don't mind. My mind, it keeps the score. In trouble, he locks the door, leaving out on its own. Lifeless shown. She speaks a sorry lie, and he sees the weary sighs fall out from what is now an unsure vow. Hold out, just hold out your fires, and hide all, just hide your desires. Stand your ground. Just hold your ground.
Good stuff going on here. It's a good song. Really good song. We've got quite a bit more to kind of bring in here. Let's go ahead and move through it. I'm going to go back to this violin section.
Lifeless shown. She speaks a sorry lie, and he sees the weary sighs fall out.
So this section we'll come back to. Just taking a note on that. Big picture. Start bringing in some of these other things. Mellotron.
She speaks a sorry lie, and he sees the weary sighs fall out from what is now.
The panning is already baked into these tracks, so we don't really have to worry about placing the instruments unless it's an issue.
She speaks a sorry lie.
Got some choir parts here.
Sighs. From what is now an unsure vow. Hold out, just hold out your fires, and hide
I'll just hide
your desires. Stand
Check this out. There's so much percussion here. Dude, I love that wood block. Fun.
Yep.
Stand your ground. Stand your ground. Just hold out your fires. And hide, just hide your desires.
Oh man. So much opportunity for spatial processing there. You know, like just hearing like just this really long, gooey kind of reverb there. Those banjo plucks in and we'll be done.
Stand your ground. Stand your ground. Just hold out your fires. And hide, just hide your desires. Stand your ground. Stand your ground.
Let's do another pass.
So stop.
I know it all too well. My body's under your spell. And I know, given the time, I follow, and I don't mind. My mind, it keeps the score. In trouble, it locks the door. Leaving out on its own. Lifeless shown. She speaks a sorry lie, and he sees all out your fires. And hide, all, just hide your desires.
Sweet. Pretty good. Pretty good stopping point for static mix. It's gonna need a lot of. So here's the thing. There's some obvious things that we have to deal with, right? There's some obvious kind of like mid-range build-up things we have to deal with. Things that we have to deal with in the lead vocal in terms of the high end, like the harshness, kind of managing that a little bit. But across the board, I think this is a really good starting point for this track. We're drawing attention to the elements right now. I really like, it's the vocals, right? It's very vocal heavy. It's a party. It should sound like a lot of people on stage together, like the mighty wind, right? Like a ton of people on stage right in front of you. Like, and it's a party, right? And the vocals are kind of the main piece of that, right? So those harmonized vocals and just how all of the instruments kind of work together to create that choo-choo train effect, right? Just moving us along, right? Getting us bopping. Yeah, Mumford and Sons, exactly. This is all day. This is Mumford and Sons, right? Even the vocal sounds, strikingly similar to the Mumford and Sons vocalist, right? But it's folk, it's
good
kind of
reference.
like a folk pop,
Yeah, good reference. Do you want to turn it back to me for a little bit of insight into how we can assess things at this point?
I would love to.
I can tell you're not feeling well, dude. Thanks for doing this.
No, of course.
You're a trooper.
Yeah.
One's in chat for Jake. Look how fast we were able to do that just with volume. It's not perfect yet, but is it better than when we first showed it? It has more depth. He was able to paint in a lot of different dimensions. I think it sounds better already than how it came to us. That's exciting. And we've only just begun. But we got so much, I mean, I wouldn't release that, but if you did, it wouldn't be the worst thing I've heard. I've heard stuff that's been released that's worse than that. You know what I mean? And we did it without a plugin, without a single plugin. All right. Let's talk about
I'm going to take like a 2-minute.
You got it. Yep, you got it, man. So I want to give you some tools that really help you, especially for those of you who might be in imperfect rooms, or you're learning to hear frequencies, you're learning to hear dynamics. I'm going to give you some tools over the next 3 days that's really going to help you with some of this stuff. We are mastering.com. Our whole program is actually built around the idea that we can learn a lot from mastering. We actually used to only train mastering engineers for many, many years. I trained mastering engineers. And what happened is we would bring these producers and engineers, people that used to kind of only be something that you learned when you were old and gray and you were kind of looking to become the wizard of engineers. You would go and learn mastering. But we started bringing in people a little earlier on. And what would happen is we were teaching mastering to these people, and we kept hearing a common theme. They would say to us stuff like, when we would talk to them in private conversations, I love learning mastering. It's great. I'm able to master stuff now, which is a financial benefit and different things. But I'm also feel like I'm changing as an engineer. There's something about learning mastering, not mastering itself, but the process of learning mastering, the way you guys are teaching it, that's actually making me better at the other parts of the process. I feel like I'm a better mix engineer. I feel like I'm even a better producer from what I'm learning from mastering. What we realized that there was reason for this. There's something very powerful about learning the end of the process. When you start mastering for people and you apply those final limiters and you bring it up to industry standard volume, you get a glimpse about some pretty significant stuff. You start to hear all the beautiful things that the producer and mix engineer did, and you hear every single mistake. all the way back to the performance, all the way through, because when you apply that much volume to it, it just makes all the mistakes become super apparent. And so what was happening with these people is they started to get this end in mind perspective. They started learning about themselves when they were mastering their own work. Man, if I would have just done this different in the mix, if I'd have just done this different in production, I could master this better now. That's an incredible way to learn. What we realize is that's an incredible way to learn. When we have students come into our program, we start with mastering. We've turned that on its head. We do things completely different than anyone else in the industry. We actually start with that. It's actually an incredible foundation for learning the rest of the process. We teach mixing, we teach production, but we start people with an end in mind perspective. And that helps them understand when they're learning mixing, the things to do, the things not to do. When they're doing production, the things to do, the things not to do. So I want to share a couple of those with you today, things that can help you in your mix that are actually mastering things. How do mastering engineers think? They think with an end in mind. They think holistically. You have to have great room, ears, and tools. That's not something we can totally work on today because I can't help you with your room and your ear training and all that. They have a global perspective, and they paint with broad brushstrokes. Let's talk about how some of this can help you. The first thing I want to talk to you about today, and we're going to focus today on frequencies. Okay, tomorrow we'll talk about dynamics. We're going to talk about several things over the next 3 days, but today we're going to talk about frequencies. You might have noticed at the very end there, Jake pulled up this PAS analyzer. What is that? What is that telling us? It's a frequency analyzer from Waves. It's really cheap. If you want to pick it up, it's like $29. It's telling us about the balance of frequencies. And this is a very useful tool, again, especially if you don't have the best ears yet, if you're in a room that's not perfect, and really for anyone who's learning to start connecting your ears and your eyes. There's something I want to teach you about using this analyzer that can help you with your mixes. And you don't have to use this particular one. You can use any one you want. You just need to know how they work. So whatever analyzer you choose to use, I want you to listen to a bunch of modern music through it. And what you're going to see is a pattern of how things look when they're mixed and mastered really well. They're balanced. Why do we want balance? Speakers, which is the end product for the listener. Everyone listens stuff through speakers, whether it's headphone speakers or big speakers in your living room. You're listening through speakers. And what speakers like, what makes them sound good, is frequency balance. If things are out of balance, it causes the cones and magnets inside those speakers to function improperly. To distort, sometimes explode if it's like Back to the Future Part 1. It was also just turned out too loud. They want balance. So whatever analyzer you use, you should figure out what balance looks like. And what you'll see is it doesn't matter what genre you listen to, you're going to see a commonality in that analyzer because most things are mixed to a nice balance. In the PAS analyzer, what balance looks like is what's on the right-hand side. And the PAS analyzer, you could listen to, again, any genre, and 9 times out of 10, what you're going to see is some form of gentle slope starting at about 60 hertz down to the end, and then it'll drop off. It's going to be a gentle slope like that. That's just what balance looks like in the PAS. It might be a straight line in other ones. You might just see it as a total straight line if things are balanced in some other analyzer. But with the PAS, it's a gentle slope from 60 down to the end. That's what it's supposed to look like. We're not looking really specifically at all those little bumps. When we're assessing this as mastering engineers, what we're looking for are like big dips, big mountains, okay? On the left-hand side, you have something that is not mixed well. What do we see there? Has all the low end, the mids drop way off, and the highs drop way, way off. So this would sound like what? What would this sound like if you heard it? Just guessing based on the visualization.
Oh, sorry. That's not a question for me.
You can answer it too. What would it sound like, Jake?
I was going to say underwater.
Yeah, it's going to sound all boomy and bassy. A lot of times what you'll see on these, and I think we're about to see it because we're about to assess this track with this same tool, or maybe a build-up in the mids. That's a very common thing to see. That's demonstrating to us that there's build-up in the mids. If you're not proficient at hearing that yet, you can imagine how useful of a tool that is then to assessing your track. This is something you could put at the end of your mix bus, and once you kind of get done with this volume phase, pull it up How close to balanced did you get? Do you have enough low end in there? Do you have enough high end in there? You're not going to be able to affect everything. Ours, we just, did volume mix. It's still going to have problems, but that will also inform us about things to do tomorrow. So the other thing you could do with this, and we're a big, when we teach this stuff, we're big on references. In mastering, when we're learning that, we're not looking at individual stuff. We're not looking how the kick sounds. We're not looking how the violin sounds or any of that. We're looking at overall frequency balance. So what I can do is I can pull this up compared to the other one. I can have them side by side. If our mix looks like what's on the left and the professional track that I bought from Amazon looks like what's on the right, I have some work to do. But at least I know what work there is to do. I need to find some warmth in the mids. I need to find a ton of high-end information. Okay? So not only can we know what balance looks like, but we can compare it to the references our clients give us or that we find for our own tracks, and we can start to bring them to a baseline that's similar to the other track. It's not the only thing we do in mastering, but it's the first thing we do in mastering is find that balance. It's really, really cool. This can help you so much. There's other referencing tools that you can use. This is one for mastering the mix that will show you the comparison between the two references. This is a referencing tool, so it loads the reference track and your original in, and it will show you on that bottom graph kind of how yours compares to the reference. You can switch them back and forth between each other really quickly. I don't know if you're using that today, Jake, or not, but this is a tool that you can use something like this, or you can just play the two references, your reference with your the mix that you're working on side by side, have two PAS analyzers like I was just showing in the last screen to see the differences. There's lots of ways to skin this cat. You just got to find one, and this can be really, really useful to you. So let's go back to Jake, go back to the DAW. Let's look at these tools. Let's see what work we have to do tomorrow and see what this looks like for us.
Wait. Pew, pew, pew. Here it is. Back to the DAW. I'm going to get a reference for this. What do you think? Let's go to a Mumford and Sons.
Let's buy a Mumford from Amazon real quick.
All right. Let's find one first. We'll go to Mumford Sons. Streaming this on YouTube. Can we play copyrighted material?
Well, we can.
Okay.
It'll just flag us on YouTube, but we don't care about that.
Cool. All right.
Sign no more.
Let's go to the most recent release. Not live 2020, not live 2019. Well then, see if this one will work. Nope, probably not.
That original stuff is more of this style.
You ever said time is not on our side, but where do I turn or get on again? But don't you sit with
Not quite. Oh, they get kind of poppy here.
They got really poppy after their second album.
Yeah.
I would go to one of the first two albums for this style, the stomp clap.
It's going back. As long as you're cool with that. Going back.
It's
almost
fine.
10 years.
It's fine. That's the style.
You know.
Those are great sounding records.
twilight.
It's even further back here, huh?
Yeah, it's Babel or the one before it.
That one, right?
Sure.
I will wait for you. Okay. Oh, and then we'll just go to Amazon.com. We'll go to I Will Wait by Mumford and Sons. There it is. There it is. MP3 song.
MP3s are fine, by the way, for this type of
High quality.
assessment. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
high
fine.
quality MP3s.
The high end will drop off a little sharper, but for the most part, this will work just fine. You can rip it off if you want to. This is just faster, honestly.
Yep. So there it is. My desktop. I'm going to load it into my favorite referencing plugin. Reference. Aptly named.
Why don't you pull it into the session too, so we can do the paths side by side? If they don't have this plugin, we can kind of show both methods.
Goats my goats.
If you can get the wave, that's always better, but MP3 will work fine. We're looking at the big picture. MP3s just really like kind of cut out a lot of information in the very, very high range, but it's going to be about the same.
I'm going to send these to a mix bus. Cool. Okay, now we're all set up. We can switch back and forth. I'm going to kind of level match these things first.
Yeah, that's going to be loud.
But I'm here. It keeps the score now. In trouble. I'm here. My mind waiting for now. In trouble, he locks the door. I know my bride out on its own. I will this new sun, but I'm healed. It keeps the score. Oh, I'm healed now.
Cool.
What are you guys
Good
hearing?
reference.
What are y'all hearing?
Yeah, what are you hearing, guys?
Besides that, ironically, they're in a similar key and BPM.
And it's the same singer. Just kidding. It's not really the same singer. That was a joke. Sounds similar, right?
I actually really like the local kin singer. Sounds really cool. Shout out to local kin. Everyone look him up. All right, let's see what Paz tells us. between the two.
Here's our reference. Here's our mix.
Interesting.
My mind for now. Oh, he locks the door.
Pretty similar. Where are you seeing differences? Are you seeing them?
Here, let me clear these both out. Do it again real quick.
My mind, it keeps the score. Hey, trouble now, kneel down, no more. Leaving out on its own.
This is very interesting to me. What are you guys hearing and seeing? It's pretty close, by the way, but obviously, what have we been talking about for the last hour? There's some element we've been talking about that we really need to fix tomorrow, or I guess day 3. I just gave it away.
Give it away. We gave it away.
That brightness in the vocal. You could hear it before. Now you can see it. It's not sloping down very much. It's pretty bright. You can see it now. I mean, that is some brightness in the vocal. That's all coming from the vocal. You mute the vocal, that's gone.
Right. There's the Mumford vocal. Sloping off very nicely and gently, very easy and smooth to listen to. Here's our vocal. Nice big middle finger right there at about 10K.
You also have, and it's less apparent, but look between about 125 and 300 on ours. You have to realize that the space between that square is actually 20 dB, so it's not as, it's a little trickier to see, but there is definitely some buildup, especially in, and even up to like 500. Some of those lower mids, there's some stuff we need to carve out there. On a different song, you might see that pronounced more. This is more just like we need to clear out 5 dB of mud down there somewhere. And we'll do all that tomorrow. So, a very useful tool. This can inform you. Okay? But we got pretty far with just volume. Good job, Jake.
Thank you, Caleb. And thank you guys for joining me. It's good company today.
On the journey. We'll talk about other mastering tools to use, but this is the first one I want you to start thinking of as you do your own volume-only mixes tonight, because that's the assignment. As you do your own volume-only mixes tonight, see what this tool, find some analyzer, see what it does for you, see if it helps you. Jake, if we don't get permission to post these, I have a feeling we might not, because I don't think this is released yet. Let's post something for him to work on. We'll post a link or something for some files for y'all to work on.
Yeah.
If not, if you want to work on something that you're currently working on, go ahead and save an alternate version of the project. Save what you have. Start over. Okay? Remove all of the processing and plugins. If you start from scratch, you won't have to do this part. But remove everything. Start, save an alternate version. Remove all your plugins. Bring all your faders down to negative infinity. Do your gain staging too. Then go through prep. Get everything organized really well. Edit it really well. And then volume balance your session to the best of your ability. Volume and panning only. No plugins allowed. I want you to experience what that workflow looks like for you. There's not only one workflow to do this, but we found this to be a very valuable one because it keeps your mindsets right. We're going to work with so much intention. We're painting in that cube. That's all I'm focused on. I'm not rabbit holing on all these other things. I'm not getting down a rabbit hole of compressors and EQs. I'm painting in the dimensions of the cube to create that beautiful sound stage in front of me. But I'm also taking notes. Notice that all along the way, Jake was hearing things that he couldn't fix, which is volume, and making a little note. It took him 2 seconds to just jot a little note down, which means we don't enter into tomorrow when we start fixing this stuff with no direction. We already know the stuff we couldn't fix, which is volume. We can start there and see how far we can get with the notes that we had today. So we're working with more intention today, but we're also working with more intention tomorrow. And if you'd like to, share your volume, only mix in school, get feedback, interact with each other. The replay of this will be live at an hour or two in school. If you missed some of it, if you were late, go ahead, get in school. The replay will be live there in an hour or two. But that's it for today. Volume only mixing. It's the correct mindset, in my opinion. See what it does for you. See if it works for you. See how far you can push. Make it a game. See how far you can push that mix just with volume panning and everything that's on your volume fader. All right, it's been beautiful. You're a great group. I love all the help you're giving each other in the chat. I love all the help that you're giving each other in school. Thank you so much for being good people. We will see you tomorrow at the same time. Come ready to rock. We're going to dive into instrumentals, the instrumental part, cleaning up all that low-end mud, getting that ready, and then day 3 we'll focus on the vocals. Thanks so much, everybody. Much love to all of you. Have a good evening, and we'll see you tomorrow. Peace.